Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 6:36 p.m. And of course, today's date is the 11th of May 2025. How are you doing? How are you guys doing? Happy Mother's Day one more time. If you're just tuning in today, because we've been on live twice today. Okay. So happy Mother's Day to the beautiful, gorgeous, amazing, wonderful mothers around the world. And you guys make life better for us men as well as the kids. Okay. God bless you. Thank you so much for being mothers. Okay. I appreciate you guys so much. Shout out to my mom. Shout out to my late wife. Shout out to my mother in law. Shout out to all the moms in my life. Okay. God bless you guys. All right. With that being said, Commerce Secretary Lutnick, he is saying here that new trade deals are coming up. New trade deals are coming up. Probably tomorrow. Now, we all know that, well, some of us know that China and the United States met in Geneva today. Okay. So if we're going to say anything positive, we would say that China and the United States is most likely going to ink a deal. President Xi of China, he's already saying, you know what? I don't want to go on with this. Okay. You're the largest consumer. We are the largest manufacturer. So let's go on ahead and ink a deal. Now, that deal would change a lot. Matter of fact, that deal would define that deal, in my opinion, the China United States deal, trade deal, that deal would definitely determine Trump's term. This whole second term, Trump's term is going to be determined. The success of Trump's administration would be determined by this China and USA trade deals, as well as Russia and Ukraine war being, de-escalated and peace in that region. That is definitely going to define President Trump's term. Okay. But with that being said, let's go listen to Lutnick.
Is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. I want to start with what President Trump said on social media, that there was much agreed to in negotiations on Saturday. What were some of the things that they agreed on in these talks in Switzerland?
Well, first, I just have to wish you a happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
What a great day to be alive, and I want to wish my wife a happy Mother's Day as well. The team is in Switzerland meeting with their counterparts from China, and they are hard at it. There's a lot to accomplish. There's both a lot to take care of and get off the table, and they're working hard at it. At the end of the day, they felt good. The president felt good, and I'm going to leave it to them. But it felt good yesterday. The president tweeted that out and truthed that out. But things feel really good.
Well, he said even more than that, as you saw. The president said there was a total reset. So did something fundamentally change, or is he sort of saying that to try to encourage the talks to continue?
Well, I'm leaving it to the trade team. They're there right now. They're in the room right now. So I'm just going to leave it to them to take care of that themselves. And but they felt good yesterday, and that was really uplifting. I mean, what a day yesterday. I mean, ceasefire in India and Pakistan. I mean, how wonderful is that? Think of the lives. The United States, J.D. Vance and Senator Marco Rubio got involved. The president was involved. I mean, how wonderful to cause a ceasefire all the way on the other side of the world. Wonderful, wonderful day for Mother's Day.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Definitely a lot going on. I just one other question, and I completely understand where you are, that it's the Secretary of the Treasury who is over there. But do you have any sense, I know you're in touch with them, if China has made any concessions?
I want to leave it to the
Okay.
team to take care of that. I mean, this is really important for the United States. It's really important to China. Let's let the team take care of that. And they're hard at it right now, and everybody's rooting for them from both sides. But I think we're optimistic that things will work out well.
Okay. As the Secretary of Commerce, I do want to ask about the fact that there are no ships carrying goods from China bound for the West Coast right now. President Trump said earlier this week that drops in imports is actually a good thing because it's going to affect people's wallets and jobs. Well, he said it's a good thing because it shows that the imports that the tariffs are working. But in reality, it's going to affect people's wallets and jobs. Truck drivers, port workers, American consumers. So my question for you is, how is that a good thing?
Well, I think the point that the president makes with his tariffs is that America has a $1.2 trillion trade deficit. That means other people are selling us goods that more than we are selling them. And that's just not balanced. It's not fair. We're losing $1.2 trillion a year, of which directly and indirectly to China, that's about $1 trillion. You know, China sells goods to Vietnam. Vietnam repackages them and sells them to us. So the idea is the president wants balanced and fair trade, and tariffs are the tool to create balanced and fair trade. It's just unsustainable for $1.2 trillion to be exported to the rest of the world, meaning our money is going to the rest of the world. It's building them up. And over time, it's taken us down. And the president's here to fix it. So that's what he's trying to do with his tariffs.
And I understand what you're talking about with regard to sort of economic policy. But there's economic policy, and then there's how people in the United States actually feel and the immediate effect on them. So just to be clear, are you saying that ultimately fixing what the president sees as a problem, which he just described, is going to mean that the American people, whether they work at a port or whether they're truck drivers or whether they're consumers, they're just going to have to suffer in the short term, maybe even longer?
No. Let's take a look at the UK deal we did we announced on Thursday, right? We opened the opportunity for Americans to export to the United Kingdom $5 billion more than they've ever had the right before. You had beef, ethanol, row crops, vegetables, fruits, cereals, sodas, machinery. I mean, just the list goes on and on. So the idea for the president is, look, we published our rates on Liberation Day. Negotiate with us, bring those rates down by opening your markets to Americans who can export. So what's going to happen is we're going to have imports. Of course, our ports, we are the consumer of the world. I mean, we consume $20 trillion worth of stuff.
But
the
that
world
is
wants to
stopping
sell
now.
us stuff.
But it's not happening now because
It's
of the
only
president's tariff
stopping.
policies.
No. It's only stopping. Look, we are in a negotiation with China. We agree. It has stopped 145% on China. Of course that stops it. But they're negotiating that right now. That we are optimistic that will open. But what the president's tariff policy is let's open all the markets in the world that have been closed to us. Let's get that opportunity for Americans to export to them. Let's really, really help Americans export. And of course, those people who import are going to have great businesses. We are the greatest economy in the world. Everybody wants to come here. As the president likes to say, everybody likes to shop here with our consumers, and it's going to work out great. The UK shows you how great it can really be.
Yeah, but as you well know, because you worked on the UK deal, which I'll get to in 1 second, that's a very different kettle of fish than China and even some of the other countries that I know that you are trying to deal with directly. So when it comes to, again, I'm talking about American jobs and American consumers in the short term. We're heading into the summer, and it could mean, tell me if this is wrong, that a lot of the goods that Americans are used to either buying or getting easily will either be more expensive or hard to get. We're talking about beach chairs, swimsuits, picnic supplies, fireworks. Is this something that Americans just need to understand is going to be harder to buy?
Well, I think, look, the Chinese and our representatives are meeting now. So, let's just leave what's possible with China to what happens on Monday, Tuesday, and next week. But the rest of the world is open for business, right? Remember, we have a low tariff on the rest of the world while we negotiate. But our expectation is that these countries are going to open their markets, their tariffs are going to come down, the ability for us to export and grow our economy is going to be better than ever before. That's why President Trump talks about a golden age. Of course, all these countries are going to come and sell their products to us. Of course, we're going to have our shelves full of wonderful products made around the world, but we're going to make sure on their shelves that American products are finally given the fair treatment that they deserve. And I think what people forget is that we have been locked out of economy after economy after economy, and President Trump is going to break down those barriers and let us sell. Imagine this. If we can let other countries accept our standards, then our small businesses can sell online to foreign purchasers. I mean, imagine we're not allowed to do that now. It's just not fair trade, and President Trump is on trying to make it fair trade.
You mentioned the UK agreement. You were the lead negotiator there, aside from the president, of course. And it does, you mentioned some of the aspects of it, but one other aspect is that it keeps in place a 10% across the board tariff on goods imported to the U.S. from the UK. As you know, the cost of tariffs are paid by American consumers. We've been talking about this. So should Americans be prepared?
I disagree with that,
Well, okay. But most economists, I would say, disagree with you on that. And we have seen it being passed off time and time again to the American consumer. But regardless of that, just on the policy, this is what I want to ask you about. Is the 10% tariff that we're seeing in the framework for the UK going to be in place for the foreseeable future?
So we do expect a 10% baseline tariff to be in place for the foreseeable future. But don't buy the silly arguments that the U.S. consumer pays. Businesses, their job is to try to sell to the American consumer. And domestically produced products are not going to have that tariff. So the foreigners
so who's going to eat the tariffs?
Finally have to compete. They're going to have to compete. What happens is the businesses and the countries primarily eat the tariff. Look, we have 25% tariffs that were set under President Trump's first term. I don't hear a single word, not a single word about those tariffs. No consumers in America, those were set in 2017 and 2018. No consumers in America sit here complaining about those tariffs.
Well, prices
what happens is
prices have gone up for lots of reasons.
Currencies. Oh, no. Don't talk about the Biden inflation. That's another whole gig. When President Trump in 2019 had the lowest inflation in history. So
let me ask,
you know that this works really, really well. It works well. These countries and the businesses have to compete. Yeah. They have to cut prices. You've seen it. The Asians have said they're not raising their prices. So who's paying those tariffs? The governments and the companies. They want to compete in the greatest store in the world.
But you well know that company after company, business after business have said that they're going to pass it off to the consumer. I want to ask, because you are working on other deals, of course, many of them outside of what has happened and is happening with the UK. Is that 10% tariff kind of a baseline in the way you're approaching these other countries that you're negotiating with?
Yes, we will not go below 10%. That is just not a place we're going to go. We will, country by country, address their particular issues. So, for instance, with steel and aluminum and aircraft parts, we said those could come into the country tariff-free. Right, so Rolls-Royce engines could go on a Boeing jet that Boeing sells. And of course, you saw that Boeing announced a $10 billion deal to sell those Boeing aircraft with Rolls-Royce engines to British Airways. So that's an example how we're going to be flexible and we're going to be super smart country by country, but at least you saw the rates that were published on Liberation Day. Those countries can take those rates down if they open their markets to Americans to export. Let Americans get their stuff on these foreign governments and foreign consumer shelves, and we'll be better as a country. I think what's happened is we just have never felt the fairness of our ability to export. Finally, the President of the United States is on our side, and that's what you're going to see in the UK, and then country after country. We're going to announce, like we did with the UK, how many tens of billions of dollars of new opportunity the president is negotiating for American small businesses and medium-sized businesses to sell their products overseas. That's the golden age that's coming, and everybody else is going to build in America to get around that tariff. Remember, there's no tariff if you build it in America.
The entire world is hoping that what you are saying does come true and waiting for the next step.
When Trump and his team actually get the deal done with China, the United States-China trade deal, when it's done, everybody would realize that, okay, maybe this man is the true OG for sure, because nobody has ever done that before. No precedent has ever done that. Here we go. More Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce.
Us now, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Welcome and happy Mother's Day to everybody watching, and a special happy Mother's Day to my my beautiful wife.
Yes, appropriate way to start. Now let's dig into the business of the day, which is the talks in Switzerland with us and China. You have said, listen, this is going to take potentially dozens of talks. What can you tell us about managing expectations on a timeline when something could come together?
Well, Secretary Bessent has made it clear one of his objectives is to de-escalate. You know, 145% and 125% are really, those are kind of tariffs where you're not trading with each other. So he's there to see if we can reset the conversation, and he's at it right now. So I'm going to leave it to him of how he deals with it. But that's the objective, to de-escalate.
Well, the Wall Street Journal has said, too, that in our talks with other countries, and I know you're involved in many of getting these deals, trying to get them together, that part of it has been about pressuring these other countries when it comes to China. Here's what the Wall Street Journal reported. The idea is to extract commitments from U.S. trading partners to isolate China's economy in exchange for reductions in trade and tariff barriers imposed by the White House. The idea being not to let China flood these other countries with their products or to relocate things to these areas where they would avoid U.S. tariffs. Are those part of your conversations, those themes?
No. You know, that's fake news. I mean, we are focused on Americans, right? President Trump's idea is to bring the golden age back to America, to reshore manufacturing, to build here, to have those people who build here not pay any tariffs. And if you want to build overseas, okay, you'll pay tariffs and you'll be less competitive in America, so build here. I mean, that's the idea. Open your markets if you want to continue to, to not bring things home to America. Open your markets, let our exporters sell to you, finally get some fair trade, and let's bring lots of manufacturing back to America. But we are not under.
Exactly. It's like Chinese product are sent here. Manufacturers send to sellers here from China to the United States. But the United States manufacturers are definitely not allowed to sell their product in China. And that's not even a fair trade deal. So you want to keep getting money from Americans, but you don't want Chinese people to pay the United States manufacturers. How does that even work? Just because you are the largest manufacturer on earth doesn't mean you shouldn't be able or open to take product from other countries, especially your largest buyer. The United States is the largest buyer, the largest consumer. That's why China has to make a deal. They need the United States. Now, I'm not saying that the United States do not need China. Facts, the United States needs China as of now, as of today. However, it's not just fair for China to not be taking American product. How is that even possible?
under any circumstances focused on China when we're talking to other countries. When we're talking to China, of course our trade team is focused on China. But when we talk to other countries, there was no conversation in the UK or India or Japan or any of these other countries about China. Leave China alone. We are trying to grow America.
Okay, so you mentioned the UK deal, a big feather in the cap of the administration. You were right there with the president as he's making this announcement. And it begs the question now about that 10% tariff. Is that going to be the baseline? Here's what the president said Friday.
But basically, you have a baseline of a minimum of 10%, and some of them will be much higher, 40%, 50%, 60%, as they've been doing to us over the years.
So those numbers may sound really good to China if you're talking about 145 or 80%, but how are those numbers landing with the other folks you're negotiating with?
So you saw on Liberation Day, the president put out a whole series of tariff rates. And then the objective is to bring manufacturing back to America and also lower those rates. So those countries, each of those countries can open their markets, make a more fair trading deal with America, allow Americans to export to their countries.
The truth is, Trump is going to make this deal happen. Whether you like him or not, whether you support him or not, whether you point fingers and say he is nobody, he's not a successful man, he's not a good president, he's not a good deal maker, whatever you say about Trump, he's proven it day after day, year after year, decades after decades. He wins, okay? He's known to be a winner. He's lost a lot, but his track record shows that he's a winner. So now, the fact is, he is going to get this China-US trade deal done. He will. It might take, 30 days, 60 days? It will happen. And it's going to be good for America.
Country finally, in a way, you saw in the UK, we opened their market, $5 billion of exports. Many of these countries will be, because they have bigger economies, even bigger. And our idea is have the Americans be able to export to those countries, grow America, right? Ranchers, produce, vegetables, machinery, ethanol, things like that. Sell to those countries, lower their tariff rate, and then bring manufacturing back to America. So I think we're very, very focused on America's golden age coming. We're going to make trade more fair, and it's going to work brilliantly for Americans, both if you make it here, there's no tariff, and we can sell much, much more fairly.
Somebody asked, are we dead ass serious? Absolutely, we dead ass serious, The Oval Office as an actual businessman in there, okay? No Sleepy Joe, These administration has been coming out every time, talking to the American people, being accountable for what they do. Nobody has ever done it like this. Trump has changed the way presidents conduct their administration. He's changed it.
Everywhere in the world.
So Americans are watching and hoping for those long-term benefits, but our polling shows they're pretty skeptical at this point. 72% tell us they think tariffs are going to make the things they pay for right now more expensive. And a majority of them think that tariffs are actually hurting our economy. I mean, how do you work against that perception with messaging while people wait in the interim for something to happen?
You just do trade deals, right? Like, look at the UK deal. Right? Just look at that deal. It opens the UK market for the first time to $5 billion of exports. I mean, go talk to a beef rancher right now or a corn farmer right now. They are ecstatic. They've never been allowed into the UK market, and now they'll be allowed. So each of these countries, we're going to break open their non-tariff trading barriers, get our people the ability to export there. That's going to be great. We're going to have huge jobs in manufacturing. You've heard the president talk about trillions and trillions of factories being built in America. Those are construction jobs starting now, and then those products will not have tariffs on them. So I just completely disagree. What you're going to see is prices are going to stay stable once this policy is done. You got to give the president a chance to run it. But over the next 3 months, this policy is going to show trade deal after trade deal, opening markets, reshoring manufacturing, and no tariff charged if you make it in America.
Okay, so let's talk about in the interim, because we've got reports out on the West Coast that there are hundreds of dock workers now out of work as those ships are not coming in. The ripple effect there hitting the trucking industry and others as well. One union official out there says it's beginning to manifest itself as real loss of jobs and income from our members. So what do you say to those American workers?
I say to those American workers, Scott Bessent is in Geneva right now talking to his counterparties in China, right? Remember, this is just a China problem right now, right? We have 145% tariff. They have 125% tariff. Those tariffs are too high to do business. But that's why they're talking right now. The rest of the world is 10%. So don't overdo it. The rest of the world is 10%. They're sending their goods here, as the president has said time and time again. We are the consumer of the world. Everybody wants to sell their goods here, so they need to do business with America, and we're using the power of our economy to open their economy to our exporters. So that is happening right now. Yes, Scott Bessent is in Geneva talking to his counterparties right now, and let's see what happens. But the president said last night he was very optimistic and very positive. So you should be very optimistic and positive, because the president truthed it out, and I rely on the president.
Okay, well, no surprise to you, I don't think, that the Washington Post is not among your biggest fans. Here's what they say. Lutnick's economically incoherent and contradictory commentary. They say economists agree that tariffs are paid by importers, such as U.S. companies, which in turn pass on most or all of the cost to consumers or producers. Here's how Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer puts it.
President Trump's trade war is economic arson on our main streets, and these folks are getting scorched.
He didn't vote for you. I don't think you guys are probably besties. Is there any room, though, to work with Democrats on some of these issues?
I don't think so. I mean, I remember Chuck Schumer holding a can of Corona when the tariffs came out. I mean, imagine doing that and not holding a can of American-made Coors. I mean, why? Why would you hold up a Mexican can and say, we support Mexican production? First, it's America first. How about we support American production first? Let's bring production to America.
Exactly,
Let's employ
man.
Americans. That's sort of a key thing. Let's employ Americans. Let's build in America. No tariffs on American goods. And then if you want to sell to America, okay, you pay a tariff that makes the American goods more competitive. But we know from experience from Trump's first term that the consumers don't pay for the tariffs. They need the products coming in. They need to compete in America. So they've got to cut their price, they've got to cut their margins, and they've got to compete here. So this concept that just prices go up, you'll buy American goods, and to be competitive, the foreigners will have to cut their price. You saw it with the Asians. They've already announced they're not raising their prices on their cars that are coming in, even though there's a tariff. It proves the point. Don't buy into these economists who are just not in the real world, right? Look at the UK deal. It is working.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding. American workers
Absolutely.
and consumers are watching closely. Secretary Lutnick, we wish you the best. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm praying for the Trump administration, for Lutnick, for Bessent, all of these people making deals. If they are successful, it's for our own benefit. I don't pray for Trump to fail. I didn't pray for Joe Biden to fail. Okay. I hoped he would do what is necessary. So I always pray for our leaders, because if they do great things, it's going to reflect on our own daily lives.
We will be giving details tomorrow, but I can tell you that the talks were.
All right, so here is Bessent talking about U.S. and China trade talks is being productive. Let's listen.
Productive. We had the vice premier, 2 vice ministers who were integrally involved, Ambassador Jameson and myself, and I spoke to President Trump, as did Ambassador Jameson last night, and he is fully informed of what is going on. So there will be a complete briefing tomorrow morning. I will turn it over to the ambassador.
Thank you, Secretary. I want to echo the Secretary's remarks with respect to the Swiss government. They've been so welcoming, and they've hosted this, and everything has gone off flawlessly, and we appreciate that. And again, to the Chinese negotiators, Vice Premier Liu He, Vice Minister Li Qiangong, and Vice Minister Liao Min, worked very diligently, and these are very tough negotiators. A couple of them I know from before and have had past interactions with them. And this was, as the Secretary pointed out, a very constructive 2 days. It's important to understand how quickly we were able to come to agreement, which reflects that perhaps the differences were not so large as maybe thought. That being said, there was a lot of groundwork that went into these 2 days. Just remember why we're here in the first place. The United States has a massive $1.2 trillion trade deficit. So the president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs. And we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us to work toward resolving that national emergency.
And I would just conclude with saying it was done in the spirit of cooperation, shared interest, mutual respect, and we look forward to sharing the details with you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
There you have it. Scott Bessent talking about China-United States trade deal.
As Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer now kick off day 2 of trade discussions with China in Geneva, after President Trump announced his first new trade deal this past week since opposing reciprocal tariffs in April. The terms call for the U.K. to increase market access for many U.S. products, including U.S. agriculture, creating $5 billion in new opportunities for U.S. exporters. A 10% baseline tariff is still in effect. This is the second major deal President Trump has brokered in the last couple of weeks after inking a rare earth minerals deal with Ukraine just weeks ago. Join me now with more on the president's trade deals, peace deals, and tax deals in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Kevin, thanks so much for being here this morning. I want to begin with these talks in China. Tell us what specifically you would like to see. What would be a victory? What is the best outcome that we can expect between China and the United States?
Well, first of all, as the president said, it looks like there's a tremendous amount of progress being made. I expect that the president will announce at the end of the trade talks exactly what's happening. But, we've got a whole team over there getting updates during the talks to make sure that everybody in the White House, all the senior leadership, know exactly what's going on and have a chance to interact with everybody over there as well. I could say that what's going to happen in all likelihood is that relationships are going to be rebooted. It looks like the Chinese are very, very eager to play ball and to renormalize things. And so, what exactly goes on and off the table is in the negotiation right now, so I have to be careful giving specifics. But the president has said that we're essentially starting from scratch with the Chinese, and they seem to think that they really want to rebuild a relationship that's great for both of us.
That would be wonderful. So do you think the president obviously wants to see the Chinese buying more American products because we buy more of their products right now? But will it also have to do with other things like some of the currency manipulation or the spying and the surveillance, of course, fentanyl, COVID cover-up, any of the other non-tariff barriers?
I think the Chinese have brought their A-team to these negotiations. They've got the competence to cover all the topic areas that you've discussed in the room. And we've got, Scott Bessent and Jamieson, two of the best in the business. And so, we'll see what happens. But I think that everybody is interested in putting enough on the table so that we make a lot of progress this weekend.
Scott Bessent, about a week ago, said he would not be surprised to see a multitude of deals announced this upcoming week. And, of course, the president just announced the UK deal last week. Should we be looking at that trade arrangement as something of a blueprint, a precedent of how he's dealing with other countries?
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely is a really exciting blueprint for what we're going to be doing. And Howard Lutnick has briefed me on about 24 deals that he and Jamieson have been working on. And they all look a little bit like the UK deal, but each one is bespoke. Each one's a little bit different because different countries have different things that they've been doing wrong to us, different things they care a lot about. And so, for example, there was the UK auto issue where there ended up being a quota, and that was something they really cared a lot about. And by yielding on that, we got a whole lot for American farmers. We opened up the UK for the first time ever for beef farmers, which they really, really love. And so, yeah, it's going to be a little bit different, but the basic idea is everybody wants to have a deal, and everybody wants to make a deal soon. And so you're right, you're going to see a lot more deals in the weeks to come, next few weeks.
And as soon as this week?
I would expect so, yeah. I mean, there are a whole bunch of things that are very, very close to the finish line. In the end, the president has to decide he likes the deal or not. There was a great story where I thought the deal was fantastic, and then the president's like, I can make the deal better, and he got an extra $1 billion in agreement of the UK buying our stuff on the phone by calling Starmer. So my guess is that the president's going to make the last phone call for each one because he is the best deal maker in the world, and he's going to add a little bit at the end, I would expect.
You are also trying to do a deal with Congress on getting the president's agenda passed. You've got some balking about raising the debt ceiling. You've got others balking about not enough spending cuts. What can you tell us about those negotiations?
Right. Well, I'm part of the Big Six negotiations along with Scott, and we report regularly back to the president. The president met with Jason Smith, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, on Friday. I was right there as he was walking in, getting ready for that. And we're really, really pleased with the progress. The Ways and Means Committee is going to have a mark probably Tuesday where they put everything on the table. They've got a sketch of a deal right now, and we're highly confident after communicating with Chairman Smith that all of the president's top objectives are going to be in the bill. And then after that, we expect by Memorial Day it'll pass in the House, and then it'll go on to the Senate and hopefully be there by the 4th of July. And literally everybody thinks that could happen. There's not a lot of disagreement left in either the House or the Senate. And so we're super optimistic that this is going to be probably not only the biggest tax bill ever, but the best designed and the fastest achieved. Think about it. Have you ever seen anything move this fast? It's really astonishing.
Unbelievable. Real quick on where the revenue comes from. The president said that he's willing to raise taxes on the highest earners to pay for the no tax on tips, et cetera. Is that in the plans?
No, it's not in the plan right now, but the president is clear that he's got the objectives that he wants to achieve for the American worker, like no tax on overtime. That no tax on overtime, by the way, it's a huge benefit. We were doing some estimates that for a typical unionized worker it might be $100, $200 a week. He's got those things as top priorities in the bill, and then he understands that the House and Senate might have their priorities, and he just said that if he doesn't think they should do it, but if they did it, then he wouldn't veto the bill, is basically what he said. But it's probably not going to happen. He literally is putting his priorities first. And those priorities are in both versions of the bill that I've seen.
Okay. Kevin, thank you so much. Great to see you this morning.
Thanks, Rita. Great to see you.
All right. National Council, Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. And now this.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Hopefully, China, U.S. make a deal ASAP.
A second day of high-level trade talks between the U.S. and China wrapped up in Switzerland. The president's top trade negotiators emerged from the meeting in Geneva, touting, quote, substantial progress and appearing to confirm that a deal between the two countries has been reached.
I'm happy to report that we made substantial progress between the United States and China in the very important trade talks. First, I want to thank our Swiss host. The Swiss government has been very kind in providing us this wonderful venue, and I think that led to a great deal of the productivity we've seen. We will be giving details tomorrow, but I can tell you that the talks were productive. We had the vice premier, two vice ministers who were integrally involved, Ambassador Jameson and myself, and I spoke to President Trump, as did Ambassador Jameson last night, and he is fully informed of what is going on. So there will be a complete briefing tomorrow morning. I will turn it over to the ambassador.
Thank you, Secretary. I want to echo the Secretary's remarks with respect to the Swiss government. They've been so welcoming, and they've hosted this, and everything has gone off flawlessly, and we appreciate that. And again, to the Chinese negotiators, Vice Premier Liu He, Vice Minister Li Qiangong, and Vice Minister Liao Min, worked very diligently, and these are very tough negotiators. A couple of them I know from before and have had past interactions with them. And this was, as the Secretary pointed out, a very constructive 2 days. It's important to understand how quickly we were able to come to agreement, which reflects that perhaps the differences were not so large as maybe thought. That being said, there was a lot of groundwork that went into these 2 days. Just remember why we're here in the first place. The United States has a massive $1.2 trillion trade deficit. So the president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs. And we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us to work toward resolving that national emergency.
And I would just conclude with saying it was done in the spirit of cooperation, shared interest, mutual respect, and we look forward to sharing the details with you tomorrow morning.
All right, CNN's Betsy Klein is joining us now from the White House. A lot of optimism coming from those statements.
That's exactly right, Frederica. I mean, this has the potential to be a very significant development and one that could have massive implications for the global economy. I just want to remind our viewers how we got here. Just over a month ago, President Trump imposed those sweeping 145% tariffs on most Chinese goods. This really injected a significant amount of uncertainty into the global economy, and U.S.-China trade relations have essentially been at a stalemate ever since. Now, moments ago, we heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and the United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, who emerged from those two-day talks with their Chinese counterparts in Switzerland, really touting significant progress that has been made. Greer characterizing it as a deal. The White House also in an email saying that this is a deal, should be considered a trade deal. The president yesterday had said after this first round of talks that there was a total reset with China, and it is very clear that progress has been made. But I want to underscore a couple of points that Greer made in that video you just showed. He said it is important to understand the differences were not so large as maybe thought. He also said there was a significant amount of groundwork that went into these talks, and he said we are confident the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help resolve the national emergency that President Trump declared in April. Now, Greer, even after these Trump administration officials spent the week really downplaying expectations ahead of these talks, they had characterized them as a positive first step, but said they really did not expect a final deal to be announced this weekend. And Bessent, for his part, had suggested that this was really aimed at de-escalating those tensions with China. What we still don't know, Frederica, is what both sides were able to agree to as far as a tariff rate. Of course, we saw President Trump floating that 80% tariff rate, and he told our colleague Kristen Holmes on Friday in the Oval Office that he was open to another number that he had told Bessent to negotiate with. He declined to share that number. Now, Bessent says more details will be shared on Monday morning. Of course, markets, consumers, investors, and businesses will be watching that quite closely. Of course, the president is set hours from now to depart on the first major foreign trip of his second term to the Middle East. Clearly excited to head there with a win under his belt, potentially, Frederica.
All right, we're looking forward to more details. Joining me right now to talk more about these developments is Kenneth Rogoff.
Now, what is going on in New Jersey? All right. The mayor is going through a lot, and some senators in New Jersey. Check this out. Something happened at an ICE facility. Check this out.
The Trump administration says they may arrest 3 Democratic lawmakers after a chaotic scene outside an ICE detention center in New Jersey that already led to the arrest of Newark's mayor. Those lawmakers are under threat of arrest. They are here with me now. You see them, Democratic Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, and Congressman Rob Menendez. Thanks to all 3 of you for being here. I'm going to start with you, Congresswoman Watson-Coleman. The Department of Homeland Security's spokeswoman was on CNN and said that potential charges for all 3 of you are, quote, on the table. Have you heard from anyone at DHS that you might be charged or arrested?
We've not heard anything. We've only read what everyone else has read. We have no idea why they would even suggest that, because we didn't do anything. So, nope, we have no idea what they have in mind other than to create an environment of intimidation just by claiming that perhaps we might be subject to arrest. But there's no reason for it. Nothing happened other than the chaos that they created themselves. If anything, we were pushed and shoved and found in a very vulnerable situation for the 3 of us. We went there to do a legal oversight visit that we're allowed to do, permitted to do under the law. And ICE delayed us, tried to dissuade us, disregarded us. We were there an hour and a half before the mayor came. And we went out there to see what was happening. When the mayor was there, then the mayor was asked to leave the space. He left the space willingly. And the next thing we know, ICE is going to arrest him. And they arrested him for trespassing on public property, which is absurd.
Congresswoman McIver, I want to go back to some of the footage. We were looking at some, and I want our viewers to see that you are the woman in the red blazer as we show them.
Whoa.
The DHS says that obviously that there were chaos, that maybe you were trespassing. You can talk about that. But the DHS also says that, in their words, you were body slamming an ICE officer. Is that what we're looking at? Is that what happened?
Absolutely no. I mean, I honestly
We have the
do not
video.
know how to body slam anyone.
We have the video.
There's no video that
We got the
supports me
video.
body slamming anyone.
We got the video.
As Congresswoman Bonnie
Open your
Watson
eyes.
Coleman said,
We got
were
the video.
simply
Open
there
your
to
eyes.
do our job.
No,
Therefore, oversight
this ain't your job.
and what you're watching in a video, and we don't have all of the body cam, and we hope that all of the body cam is released.
We have one.
It was a very tense situation. It unfortunately did not have to be like that. They created that confrontation. They created that chaos.
Always
and
blaming.
then ultimately went
This
to
is
arrest.
what I don't get about human beings. We always point the fingers. We never say, you know what? Yeah, I fucked up. Okay, I messed up. Okay, next time I'll conduct myself respectfully. Okay, we always say it's them, it's you. It's never me. Okay, we are never the problem. We always point the fingers at people, but it's not gonna work anymore.
The mayor of the largest city of New Jersey, who is my mayor and my constituent. And it was very difficult to watch that happen. But absolutely, I did not body slam anyone.
Congressman Menendez, as we saw there was a lot of shoving, a lot of shouting going on. It got physical. How did this situation escalate in the first place? And is there anything about what happened looking back and looking at that video that you might regret about how it played out?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think there was a lot of opportunities for DHS, for ICE to de-escalate the situation. They chose not to. There's 3 House members there, the mayor of the largest city. And as you can see in all of the video, and this is important, they had over 20 armed ICE HSI officers. They were heavily armed. Their faces were covered, and they were wearing no identification. So this is who they chose to have come engage with the mayor of Newark and 3 elected members of the House of Representatives. As Congressman Watson Coleman said, the mayor had gone on to public property. He had de-escalated the situation. We were all on the other side of the fence, on the, let's just call it the private side of the fence. The mayor was on the public side. Someone there from HSI got a call, and what happened next was they re-engaged with the mayor. They went on to the public side, and that's where they arrested him. So there were so many instances where this could have all been de-escalated, but it was squarely in HSI ICE's court. They chose not to. They made this a violent scene that we were unfortunately all a part of, and it's something that should really shock all Americans.
And this was an attempt, you were doing an event there, but you were also trying to go forward with part of your job in Congress, which is oversight. Were you able to get any of that oversight actually done? Congresswoman McIver, I'll send that to you.
Yes, we actually were. I mean, that's why I find it to be appalling that they said we were trespassing, because how are we trespassing? And then you offer us a tour at the end, which is the reason why we were there in the first place, to have a tour of this facility that had just opened up on May 1st. It had over 100 detainees. We were getting reports prior to our tour that children were there. We did not know the status of the facility or the status of the detainees. And so that is why we showed up there, to do our job as members, and New Jerseyans count on us to do our job. Immigration has been something that's in the back doors, in the backyards of New Jersey, and it's our jobs to make sure everything is running properly at this facility. So we were able to get a tour towards the end of all of that commotion, all of that chaos. They took us on a tour, offered us a soda in the midst of doing this, never apologized or said anything about the confrontation and the chaos that they caused outside. But we were able to get in, speak to detainees, check out the facilities, and, make sure everything was okay there.
The tour, Congresswoman Watson-Coleman, just to be clear, the tour came after that confrontation?
The tour came after the confrontation, even though we were there at almost 2 hours before the confrontation took place. But ICE kept giving us the runaround and kept saying that they needed to talk to someone else. So finally, when we saw that all of the hierarchy from ICE in the state of New Jersey was on the premises, we were ready to then do the tour. But then this ensued. This conversation they had with the mayor, we were right there on the site with him when they asked him to get off of the property. He willingly moved, quietly moved with dignity and respect. And then chaos ensued when someone on the phone above the leaders of ICE who were with us at the facility instructed them to go out of the facility, go to the private property, and lock the mayor of the largest city in the state of New Jersey up. That's absurd. That's un-American. That's scary. That's determination to intimidate people in this country. And we fear for the safety and security of everyday families just trying to go about their lives. If they can do this to 3 federally elected officials with the authority to come and do their job, and they can then also lock up the mayor of the largest city in the state of New Jersey who is on public property, I understand the fear that I keep getting information on. People just are afraid of this un-American hyperactivity, this weaponization of law enforcement, and the consistent lying at all levels to try to cover up for the wrong and the unlawful activities that ICE did on that day.
A lot of unanswered questions here. Appreciate the 3 of you coming on together today to try to shed a little bit more light on it. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. What is going on with Bill Gates? Bill Gates is saying that he wants to give away all of his wealth. Okay. I don't believe that, but okay. He said he wants to give away all of his wealth by 2045 or something like that. I guess his ex-wife.
Bill, you've always been, I think, basically an optimist. And I would describe myself similarly that, at the end of the day, the trend lines for things like life expectancy and mortality, and they're all going in the right direction. But I think it's fair to say that over the last few years, some of them have plateaued. Extreme poverty, maternal mortality. Is some of your urgency in accelerating the spending because you're worried that some of these trends are not moving in the right direction?
Well, if you look at the 25-year time period, the Gates Foundation gets started in 2000 and becomes the world's biggest then, and we go from spending $1 billion a year to now we're almost at $9 billion. That's the fastest rate of improvement ever in history of reducing childhood death, HIV deaths. You're right that the pandemic and the fiscal situation in Africa, the debts there, meant that the last 4 or 5 years have not been as good. If the world remains generous, which is at risk, I think the next 20 years we can make.
When I was younger, I used to think to myself, I was born in Nigeria. I moved here about 9 years ago. I became a citizen. It took me 5 years to become a United States citizen. But in Nigeria, there's a man called Dangote. Dangote is the richest brown-skinned human being alive anywhere on earth. Dangote Aliko Dangote is the richest, wealthiest black man in the world. He was born, he's in Nigeria, he does his business in Nigeria. And when I was young, I used to think to myself, I used to think about Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Aliko Dangote, and all of the rest of these people, even including Trump. I used to think to myself, like, all of these billionaires we have in this world, there should be no hunger. There should be no homeless veterans. There should be no, women, single moms that are looking for help. There should be none of this stuff. But life isn't fair, ladies and gentlemen. Life is not fair. They keep saying they're giving billions of dollars. Their charity or their foundation is giving billions of dollars. America has been giving on paper, well, not on paper, through ads and the videos that we see say donate, donate, donate to some tribe in Africa. They've been sending billions to these folks, but it's like it never ends. These people are still broke. These people are still poor. These people are still homeless. These people are still sick. It's like, where is there an actual solution? Because it's like people are giving a lot of money to charities, to foundations, but where are these money going? We don't have free hospitals. They don't have free hospitals. So it's like, what is actually going on? But now Gates is saying that he wants to send $200 billion. He wants to give away, the Gates Foundation wants to give away $200 billion in the next 20 years. Is that going to actually end poverty in, say, Somalia or Nigeria? I don't think so, because he's been doing a lot for a long time. Yet, there are still people living below poverty level, actually dying of hunger. I just don't understand it.
Even more progress. Asia's distinguished itself, and so as those poverty numbers have gone down, you're left with the challenge mostly in Africa. And so there are some things that are going to be tougher, but the innovations will overcome those difficulties if we stay true to this cause.
And despite the enormous amount you're giving, you cannot make up the declines in government funding, right? You can be confident about this, right? That if government fundings in the Western world for foreign aid keep declining or even stay where they are, you're going to have millions and millions, tens of millions of people dying.
Absolutely. We'll see a reversal. Instead of going from the 10 million children dying a year to the 5 million, it's going to go back up. And so we're going to lose millions of lives. And a poignant milestone for that will be the Gavi, the group that buys vaccines for these poor countries, that 80% of that has been rich world governments, 20% is Gates Foundation. If that 80% is substantially cut, that alone will lead to lots more deaths. So we are definitely in a global health emergency because the European budgets are being cut, and the proposal in the US is very dramatic. It's not only has money been cut, in fact, by the executive branch, they're proposing that the Congress in the next budget cut it 80%. Now I'm going to try and avoid that. I'm going to work, with the executive and Congress, but that would be a dramatic reversal in the improvements we've driven.
You said that Elon Musk choosing through Doge to cut USAID, to essentially dismantle USAID, is a case of the world's richest man being involved in the deaths of the world's poorest people. Musk is a smart guy. Do you think it was pandering to the prejudices of the Republican base, which thinks all foreign aid is wasted? What do you think was going on there?
Well, I think if you show up and say in a few months you can cut $2 trillion out of a $7 trillion budget, you're not going to succeed. And so you go for the softest things, and things that are overseas that you can.
One thing is for sure, Bill Gates definitely, he respects Elon Musk because he used to short Elon Musk's stocks, which is Tesla, for people who actually trade options and stuff like that. You know what? Shorts, puts, calls, you know what that means. He used to short Tesla stocks. So he was betting on Tesla's stock to go down, back in, let's say, 2021, 2022. But I get it. Elon is the new mega star. He's the new era of billionaire, is the new era of an innovator, just like Steve Jobs back in the day. But this man right here, Bill Gates, he's seen multiple ups and downs when it comes to the economy. He's been doing this for years, ages. He has more experience for sure. But Elon Musk is definitely a serial businessman. Okay, he is absolutely wild. I saw a documentary on Elon Musk and how it works. I could say that I actually like watching documentaries of these billionaires, innovators, people who actually do things that matters in this world. They don't have to be billionaires as well. I watch anybody's documentary. But when I saw Elon's documentary, the way he operates like he has a chip in his brain. He operates like he has some sort of robotic heart. I don't get it. He's like the real life Iron Man. He's definitely taking everything to the extreme. He's pushing the limit every single day, and you got to give him credit, man.
Mischaracterize, characterizing it as condoms for Hamas, didn't have one iota of truth, and talking about people that he hasn't spent time with. I mean, I spend a lot of time in Africa. I go to Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, meet the USAID people. He's a genius in some domains, but in global health, it hasn't been a focus. And so I'd say that, firing all those people and cutting off all that money, that was a mistake. I don't think the U.S. values are to lose.
There you have it. He acknowledges that Elon Musk is a genius in some cases, in some areas, but maybe not in cutting government funding and something that has been established for a long time. I get it. Older people don't like to see new things or accept change. It's just like when you get older, it's harder to change. But when you're young, when you're like, that's why there's this saying that it's hard to repair a broken man, but it's easier to train a child. So Elon Musk is definitely younger than Bill Gates, but Bill Gates has more experience when it comes to this type of stuff. But I definitely think Elon Musk has taken everything to the extreme, and he's willing to make mistakes, lose a lot of money, and try again. But unlike Bill Gates now, I feel like he's more rigid-minded than Elon Musk, because Elon Musk is ready to lose, and go again, because he's just like that. But Bill Gates has been doing this for a long time, so he's ready to just sit back and kick back.
Those relationships and destroy those health systems that increases the risk of a pandemic. We want to be a force for good. If there was a modest cut, and a challenge to be more efficient or to get others to step up, I'm fine with that. But 80%, that's going to be millions of deaths, and it's a mistake.
You, as you say, you have worked with USAID and with those, I've visited and seen these programs. And they've been characterized. Part of the, the issues they were cut, but then there was a kind of brutal assault on these people, saying that they're criminals and things like that. What is your assessment of the people who were working on PEPFAR and things like that?
Well, these are heroes. I mean, to take a job in Africa, and these aren't, high-paying jobs, other than the military, these are about as honorable, and they're the face of America to people who we want to be allied with us. And we want their health systems to be, tracking potential pandemics. So, it's a shame that they were characterized in that negative way. As we build it back, fine, we'll do it with a bit fewer people.
but demonizing them is deeply unfair.
When you thought about doing this, spending down the entire foundation fortune, is it part of your concern that the world is changing so much, especially with AI, that you just don't know what a foundation 40 years from now should do, and you'd rather, you are living in the world now with the problems it faces now. Why not spend the money on it now?
Yeah, I created the Gates Foundation and its partnerships, and I'm very proud of that. And I feel like I'll get to be hands-on for part of that 20 years, hopefully all of it. But the culture of the institution is very strong. So I know that it'll take these dollars and have very high impact. I also know the world will be very different.
Now, I'm not saying that giving to the less privileged, giving through your foundation, like the Gates Foundation, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's absolutely necessary for people who don't have a lot, people who are struggling, people who are sick with chronic diseases and stuff like that. I appreciate what Gates has been doing for a long time. He didn't just start Gates Foundation. He started with Belinda Gates, and they've done great works across different continents. However, most people do not know that when you give through your charity, when you give through all of this mediums, it's a way to cut back on taxes. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't truly want to give or truly want to help. What I'm saying is, do not be naive, okay? Don't be naive. When you give, the way these folks are giving, it is a tax write-off. So when he says he's giving away $200 billion, in the span of what? From now to 2045. That's a huge, large tax write-off. But what do I know?
21 years from now, partly because AI, as you say, and so I count on the people who are rich then will take whatever the infectious disease, malnutrition agenda that we haven't achieved in the 20 years, because we will end polio, we'll get rid of a lot of other diseases, that they'll take it up, knowing the geopolitics and the AI of that time. So I don't want a legacy. I'm not trying to be remembered. That's not important to me. And so the fact that foundation will be gone, the dream would be that malaria and polio, the legacy would be that nobody remembers what those awful diseases are.
I mean, I respect him, though. I'm not even going to cap. I respect Bill Gates. He's smart.
And we are back with more of my interview with Bill Gates.
Look at his face.
Let me ask you what you think about the state of the global economy, and particularly the U.S. economy.
Like no humble and shit. Rich as
Harvard economist who I spent some time talking to, says that to him the worst thing about our U.S. current economic policy is it's all self-inflicted and voluntary. That in the past we made mistakes, but they were during a big crisis, a Great Recession, or Nixon facing the problem of the dollar not being able to be converted to gold, or even Smoot-Hawley was after the financial crash of '29, after the Great Recession, trying to figure out what to do. These tariffs we've just imposed on ourselves, how damaging do you think it is?
Well, the big concern I have is we've created a lot of uncertainty. If you're going to build a new factory, you need to understand the policies for the next 20 years, not just the next 2 days or even 4 years. And so the notion of, okay, what is the structure, particularly in a time of AI where the labor substitution, both white collar and blue collar, is going to start to change the economy. I think it's
what I don't get is when I say wealthy people are like, for example, I said Bill Gates, I said he's smart. Somebody said he's evil. Why? Why? What makes him evil? Because he's a billionaire? Because he has hundreds of billions? That makes him evil? Well, I don't know. I think he just took advantage of the opportunities he had. He went to a school that had the first computer in the United States. He was lucky enough to go to a school that had a computer, and that school was the only school that had a computer in the whole of the United States. So, yeah, luck meets preparation and whatever you want to call it, but he's been lucky all his life.
A bad time to interject so much uncertainty, and this is not a agreed set of things or a carefully discussed set of things. What's going to happen with pharmaceuticals or electronics? I open the paper every day wondering. So I do worry that uncertainty means that investments don't take place.
How worried are you about the future of the U.S. economy?
I think there's a lot of resilience in the U.S. economy. We've seen even with this uncertainty, the jobs numbers have not been that bad. I'm not an expert on that. I mean, another 1 or 2% of growth. For me, it's about the cutting edge and saying, okay, can the U.S. Stay in the lead? And, I do think being friendly to other countries, so they want to, they don't think we're going to withdraw our technology in some sudden way. That's important. And then, being an exemplar of, briefly there were gigantic tariffs on very poor African countries. And, I don't see what the benefit of that would have been. I'm particularly focused on our role in lifting up those in greatest need, and the potential tariffs would have been particularly bad for these poor countries.
Do you think the tech bans on China are work, or do they make the Chinese more determined to come up with their own local versions, as with DeepSeek, as with Huawei with the Ascend chip? I mean, are the bans having in a weird way the opposite effect?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they have forced the Chinese in terms of chip manufacturing and everything to go full speed ahead. Basically, it's very hard in the world we live in with open source software and everything. The Chinese are not going to get substantially ahead of us, and we're not going to get substantially ahead of the Chinese. The AI technologies will be available to the world, and people can build on those in their own way. The notion that it was going to be super unique to us, we made clear to them that they needed to make their own chips, and they're making great progress on doing that.
All right, Bill Gates, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Now, what is going on between Russia and Ukraine? Guess what? Zelensky is now going to have a conversation with Vladimir Putin. And it's crazy that Zelensky's name is Vladimir and Putin's name is Vladimir. Okay, here we go.
Russian President Vladimir Putin appears to have shrugged off demands for an immediate unconditional ceasefire starting tomorrow. European leaders and the U.S. are trying to put pressure on Putin to agree to the month-long ceasefire. And the hopes, of course, is to bring an end to this 3-year-long war. Yesterday, Putin proposed direct negotiations, but he wants them done in Istanbul. And on Thursday, he made no mention of the ceasefire. Responding to Putin's speech, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said it's a positive sign that Russians have finally begun to consider ending the war and that Kyiv is ready for direct talks with Russia. CNN's has Seb Shukla. He's following the latest in London. And we're going to start, though, with Nick Payton-Walsh. He is in Kyiv. And Nick, just a moment ago, my producer told me that, you were kind of out of the camera lens because there is a threat that's happening now that's in direct context of this ceasefire discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon here for there to be air raid sirens. We had some early this morning. We've had some in the last 10 minutes. This, though, specifically the Ukrainian Air Force warning of a ballistic missile threat to the capital, Kiev here. As I say, not uncommon. Every night, Ukraine, with the exception of a couple of nights during Russia's unilaterally declared ceasefire in which they continued front-line fighting, every night Ukraine is hit by Russian attack drones and often ballistic missiles too. So that's just some context, though, for this discussion of diplomacy, which at times can feel very ethereal and detached from the gritty reality here of missiles being fired often at civilian areas. So where we are today is a European demand with Ukraine and with US backing for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire has not been accepted at this point by Russian President Vladimir Putin. And indeed, in very late night comments early this morning, he talked about how Ukraine hadn't honoured previous ceasefires. Ukraine says Russia has indeed. There's evidence, frankly, that these have been very rocky when they've been declared unilaterally, certainly in terms of Moscow's adherence to them. He talked too about the need for direct negotiations between Ukraine and Russia and gave a date for that, Istanbul, on Thursday. Now, none of that is new. There have been talks between some parties in Istanbul in the past. And indeed, too, the idea of direct talks between the two countries has been agreed to in different types of wording by both Kiev and Moscow. So what Putin, I think, is suggesting is another diplomatic phase here in a country and a capital, in Istanbul, a city where indeed we've seen diplomacy before. But we've heard from the French President Emmanuel Macron, who did a lot of the lifting to get us to this point of the demand for a ceasefire, speaking to President Trump in the past days many times indeed. He called this, suggested this was another delaying tactic. He said in a tweet and a post on social media that there must be a ceasefire first, that you can't have negotiations while civilians are indeed being shelled by Russian bombs. And so it appears the European demand remains the same. That's been echoed by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, that ceasefire first, then talks. What we don't know yet is if indeed the White House, President Trump putting a very positive post out after Putin's comments last night. We don't know if that is in fact going to result in the massive sanctions that French President Emmanuel Macron talked about yesterday as being the consequence if Russia doesn't sign up to the ceasefire. He said he had American backing for that. Donald Trump said he continued to work with Ukraine and Russia to be sure this process moved forwards. We don't know the timing of when those potential consequences might kick in, or indeed if they'll have the same kind of hard backing that the Europeans suggested they would in that remarkable meeting yesterday in Kiev.
Nick Payton-Walsh for us there in Kiev. Thanks so much. Let's go now to CNN's Sebastian Shukla in London. Sebastian, the consequences, as Nick laid out, we don't know yet. What is clear is that this is not going to satisfy Europe after they set that ultimatum, that demand just yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's right. What the Kremlin and President Putin are trying to do here is move the ball back into Western Europe's court here and say, look, okay, you guys are prepared to put an ultimatum on us of this ceasefire, which needs to begin on Monday. But what President Putin is doing is saying, okay, I raise your 30-day ceasefire ultimatum on Monday. I'm going to say, let's have direct talks between Kyiv and Moscow, which is something, as Nick was saying, is not new, but certainly haven't happened since the early days of the invasion in February 2022. So this is President Putin again trying to pull the rug and fool and trick the West into thinking that he is making and serious about peace and ending the war in Ukraine. And there may be some substance to that. Don't forget that the administration led by Donald Trump has kowtowed to Moscow in many ways. You know, it sidelined Ukraine, it's sidelined its European partners and held direct talks with Moscow. But then that rhetoric changed again, where we saw Senator Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, come out and say, well, look, we're losing patience and the administration may be being strung on a little by the Kremlin. And so this may be yet another ploy by Moscow to be able to say, look, no, we're serious about negotiations, but within all of this, the context and framework is so important. You can say you want to have the discussions, but so far, President Zelensky and nobody else has ruled out attending them.
Seb Shukla, for us in London. Thanks so much. Do you think that this offer from President Putin, attempting to skip by this request or this demand for a 30-day ceasefire and go straight to talks in Istanbul on Thursday, will be enough to peel off President Trump, who wants a quick finish, who wants a win, from what we saw from him yesterday, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine and the rest of Europe?
I think it's designed to do that. Trump wants quick action, and Russia is showing that it is on the side of peace. And I think Zelensky's response is also designed to appease Trump, to say, look, I'm not the one standing in the way of peace. The Europeans, I think, are taking the more realistic view. We've heard from President Macron of France saying this is Russia just buying time. I think that's the more accurate description of it. But both Moscow and Kyiv are signaling towards Washington, not towards the Europeans.
Bobby Ghosh, always good to have you. Thank you.
Anytime.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you?
That right there was the biggest upset of his win when he won the election in 2024, November 5th. Everybody was like, whoa, the war is going to end, which, Israel and the Palestinian people saw some sort of de-escalation, but it's taking him about 120 days to end this war between Russia and Ukraine.
Because I'll meet with Putin, I'll meet with Zelensky. They both have weaknesses and they both have strengths. And within 24 hours, that war will be settled. I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine totally settled. I'll have it done in 24 hours.
So it's been more than 24 hours since the president became president again. Putin did say overnight that he's open to direct talks, unconditional talks with Ukraine, but Zelensky says there must be a ceasefire first. Over the weekend, the U.S. and European leaders threatened sanctions against Russia if they did not agree to the ceasefire. What do you make of the way that Trump has been handling this situation so far?
You heard it, that clip, and you heard it from this report from reporting Olivia was talking about it. He's very relational, and he's a nationalist. He has very good relationships with people like Modi, with Putin, quite frankly, and they have their own interests. Modi has his own interests, his own popularity base in India because because of Hindu nationalism, because of the way he's run that country. It turns out when America pulls back a bit from the world and encourages nationalist impulses, nationalist leaders, Modi, who's seen even by some in India as a strongman, they don't always act on America's best interests. Russia's not acting in America's interest. Russia's acting in its own. Ukraine and Europe have less faith in the administration actually the United States as a broker than they did. They're looking more towards each country's individual interest. And I think you're starting to see the very beginnings of what that means. If the United States is not swooping in with a deal, if it's dealing with these countries as they are, with their own intent, with what's best for their polities, they're going to get a different deal. You saw in India, one story that came out of this was Chinese Chengdu plane. A plane that China was manufacturing performed very well. A reminder that there is a vast power much closer to India with much more history there that has its own influence growing in the region because America's pulling out. So there are a lot of complications that are harder than getting a deal one day because you're friends with the president or the prime minister.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Some people are saying that, okay, to be honest, I do believe that, Trump says what he wants to say, but America should not send troops. Do you guys think America should send troops? I definitely don't support sending troops to Ukraine, no. But American miners are going into Ukraine now to get this rare earth minerals. So
More on this, let's bring in North Dakota Senator John Hoeven. He sits on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Some confusion, Senator, about whether there is a deal or not. How do you take this news?
Well, first, John, happy Mother's Day to my wife and all the moms out there. Great to be with you. Look, this is very encouraging. Obviously, they're not going to have a deal fully done. You've got Jamieson Greer over there, the U.S. Trade Representative, and the Secretary Bessent. That's the first string, no doubt about it. But they're still going to come back and talk with President Trump and all those kind of things. But the important point is they made real progress and have a framework to get to a deal. That's huge. I mean, this is incredibly good news. It's frankly much sooner than I expected. But obviously just a tremendously good thing, certainly for us. And I think, obviously for all of our allies and partners that want China to stop with their unfair trade practices.
This country has had its problems going back to the Biden administration with inflation, egg prices, gas prices, and so on. But China's got real problems, too. They've had something like 40 bank failures in just the last week. So would you assess that China has more reason to come to an agreement here than the United States?
Yeah, to quote President Trump, huge. I mean, huge. They sell us for just the United States. They export to us $450 billion worth of goods every single year. We only sell them $150 billion, which is still a lot, but that's a $300 billion deficit. Absolutely, this puts incredible pressure on their economy. And the idea that they were going to go sell, that 300 or that 450 billion to other people, that's not going to happen. Other countries aren't going to just increase their purchases from China because we're not. So yes, they're under incredible pressure. And I think that's why you see them coming to the table the way they are coming now. But remember, they've been the worst trade abuser of all. It's not just tariffs in their case. It's also non-tariff trade barriers. It's stealing our intellectual property, violating patents and copyrights, all these things. So this is a big deal. I mean, a really big deal, not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world that wants China to start trading on a fair basis.
Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, had something to say about why the Chinese have decided to play ball with the United States. Listen.
This is just a China problem right now, right? We have 145% tariff. They have 125% tariff. Those tariffs are too high to do business. But that's why they're talking right now. They need to do business with America, and we're using the power of our economy to open their economy to our exporters.
Because it has been a one-way street, at least according to President Trump. China shuts out U.S. exports and floods our market with Chinese imports.
No, that's exactly right. That's why I just said they're the worst abuser of all, but they need our market. Other countries need our markets too, which is why you'll see more of these deals being announced on a regular basis. And we've always wanted a level playing field. American companies and businesses and farmers and ranchers and manufacturers and everybody else can compete very well in a global economy if they're given a level playing field. But we don't have one. And that's what President Trump is doing. He's leveling that playing field so that we can compete on a fair basis. That means not only good things for our exporters, it also means we're going to have more economic development, more manufacturing companies, more production of all kinds in our country as well. So it's not just the fact that we'll export a lot more. We're going to have more economic growth. We're going to make more things in this country. That's not only important from an economic standpoint and rising income, it's also a national security issue when you look at steel, aluminum, drugs, and all these things that we have to have.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, your Democratic colleague from Minnesota, is sometimes a critic of the tariff program that the president has instituted. Here's what she said this morning. Listen.
Sure, I'm glad they're talking, but they have assessed 10% to 25% tariffs on our allies, the very people that we would need, our friends and allies, in order to deal with China. So to me, they've been approaching this all upside down. Targeted tariffs, yes, but they should be working within trade agreements like the Canada-Mexico trade agreement with the U.S. to strengthen that instead of these across-the-board tariff taxes on all Americans, and now a baby tax.
Do you disagree with what Senator Klobuchar had to say there?
Well, President Trump is the master negotiator. And yeah, I do, because when she talks about even our allies, they have been putting up trade barriers as well. Certainly Canada, Mexico, look at the UK, look at all of the trade barriers to UK. That's why you saw that deal that was just announced with Great Britain, that knocked down trade barriers, $5 billion in increased export opportunities, a lot of that for agriculture, which, by the way, both she and I work on. So, we work together on a lot of things, myself and Senator Klobuchar, but on this one, we do disagree. And I think that you see the results starting to come in, whether it was England, now this announcement with China, and you're going to see more and more of these announcements. Combine that that with what we're doing with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, extending the lower tax rates and cutting the regulatory burden, and you're going to see our economy really respond.
Well, this tariff battle is not over yet. Obviously, we'll see where it goes, and we'll keep an eye on it. Senator John Hoeven of North Dakota, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity.
Okay, here we go. You guys think a trade deal is going to happen this week between China and United States?
As the White House continues to take up all our attention with its ongoing tariff war with the world, a little ways down Pennsylvania Avenue, Congress is preparing a budget bill that could prove to be almost as consequential. If it renews Trump's 2017 tax cuts and enacts all his newly proposed ones and does not cut spending, they will add up to $9 trillion to the national debt over 10 years, according to the nonpartisan Peter G. Peterson Foundation. At that point, America would likely be running among its largest deficits as a percent of GDP in history, and that's in peacetime with no pandemic. At the same time, Washington is raising tariffs on almost all its imports. We may have the makings of a perfect storm in the global economy. That's what Kenneth Rogoff, a famous Harvard economist, worries about. One of his past books presciently warned about the dangers of a financial crisis. It was published in 2009 while the global financial crisis was unfolding, but of course was researched and written well before it. His new book, Our Dollar, Your Problem, worries that we are jeopardizing the dollar's pivotal role in the global economy. That should matter to all Americans because we benefit enormously from what has been described as the exorbitant privilege of having the world's reserve currency. Rogoff explained to me that it allows us to borrow more cheaply, whether it's mortgages, car loans, or credit card debt. And he estimated that the discount Americans get on their loans because of the dollar is probably between 0.5% to 1%. It's sometimes hard to detect the signal amidst the buzz of noise that surrounds us these days, but Rogoff says focus on interest rates. The key fact is that after decades of falling and low interest rates, they are now up to historically normal levels and will stay up. That is what makes America's debt burden dangerous. Interest on the debt now approaches $1 trillion per year, more total defense spending. The economic historian Neil Ferguson has suggested that when this happens, a great power risks that it will no longer be great. Rogoff predicts an economic storm, and that it will be a good bit sooner because of Trump's economic policies. He believes that unless these policies are drastically reversed, there is a 50% or more chance of a financial crisis or spiraling inflation or both by the end of this presidential term. Some of the pressures we face are because of events outside America's control. Other countries have always resented the dollar's exalted status, especially once America began to weaponize it. Washington has promiscuously imposed sanctions on dozens of countries, often unilaterally, and these sanctions work only because of the dollar's special status. The Europeans, the Chinese, the Russians, and mostly every large country is quietly making efforts to wean themselves off their dependence on the dollar. It's a slow process, but it is moving in only one direction, away from the dollar. And while there's no single substitute for America's currency, Rogoff believes that the dollar will lose share to a basket of other currencies as well as alternatives like Bitcoin. This is not all about Trump. Rogoff argues that there has been a bipartisan recklessness in America's fiscal policy for decades, with Republicans cutting taxes and Democrats spending, both without restraint. It is worth noting, however, that the math is clear. Tax cuts are responsible for the vast majority of the increase in the debt-to-GDP ratio over the last 25 years. He is also profoundly worried that the Federal Reserve's independence is being compromised both from the right and from the left. Though it's worth noting that Trump is the first president to routinely attack the Fed, threaten to fire its chair, and challenge the legality of independent institutions like it in court. Rogoff told me much of the dollar's role comes from our reputation for good, stable, predictable policy, from the Fed's independence from political pressures, from our trustworthiness as the world's superpower. You can't trash all that and expect the dollar to be unaffected. There are solutions, of course, but none are painless. Doge has been an abject failure. Of the $165 billion it claims to have saved, estimates of its actual verifiable savings are around $65 billion, and even that might be an exaggeration. Anyway, that is 3% or less of the $2 trillion Elon Musk confidently predicted he would cut from the federal budget. That leaves us where we always were. The path to reducing the deficit is to cut the big programs like Medicare, Social Security, and defense, and also to raise taxes. We are on track to do the opposite, enact huge tax cuts and jack up defense spending by, if Trump's proposal is accepted, a whopping 13%. Rogoff says we have been smart and lucky for the past few decades, which has allowed us to run up deficits with no visible costs. But our economic policy is now, quote, dumb, the worst in my lifetime, unquote. And our luck might have run out. Go to CNN.com/Fareed.
Okay. Just don't get it why Americans don't want America to win. But check out this New Jersey mayor.
New Jersey was arrested outside a newly opened immigration.
He was interviewed after he got arrested or taken out of the ICE facility in Newark. Check it out.
Detention facility in his city today. Mayor Ras Baraka had been protesting the opening of that facility, given the Trump administration is planning to use it as part of the president's plan to sharply increase the number of detention beds. That's when this happened. The man you see there being arrested, wearing the brown coat and the hat, that is Mayor Ras Baraka. Witnesses say that the mayor was arrested after he tried to join a tour of the facility with 3 Democratic members of New Jersey's congressional delegation today. There was yelling and pushing after federal officials were blocking his entry. The mayor, who is running for governor, was arrested after he had returned to the public side of the gates. In a statement that came after that arrest, the Department of Homeland Security said that the lawmakers had not asked for a tour of the facility and that as a bus carrying detainees was entering, quote, a group of protesters, including 2 House members, stormed the gate and broke into the detention facility. And Mayor Ras Baraka was just released from custody and is my source tonight. And Mayor, thank you for joining me. Can you just describe what has been happening over the last few hours while you were being held?
Well, I mean, I just want to first say that the guys from Homeland Security were very respectful. They treated me with dignity, and I appreciate that. You know, while I spent my last few hours in holding area inside of I believe it's a detention facility that they have here in the city of Newark. You know, that the Homeland Security has. So, you know, it wasn't unbearable, but it was definitely, you know, a humiliating experience and uncomfortable for me overall. But, you know, in the end, those guys did the best that they could to make me feel comfortable, and I appreciate that.
And you were there protesting the opening of this facility. I know this has been something that you have been arguing against. Can you just take us back to what happened earlier today when you showed up? You were there on the ground with other members of Congress who are joining you. And I mean, we've seen this dramatic scene play out. Tell me what happened from your perspective.
Well, I'm going to say as much as I can without violating, you know, what they asked me to do in court. But, you know, I actually didn't come there to protest. I was there that morning with the fire inspector trying to serve them, as we've been doing for the last few days. We're in court with them now. The fire inspector usually puts a tag on a gate, and we leave. This happens every day. At 1 o'clock, the Congress people, Menendez, MacGyver, and Bonnie Watson Coleman, Congress people from the state of New Jersey, was going into the facility, and they said that they had been granted entry into the facility and was having a press conference. Afterwards, I came to attend the press conference as I was asked to. You know, obviously, ICE after a while made a determination after somebody came and said that we shouldn't be there. and began to, after they told us to leave, we left and they began to try to arrest me. I shouldn't say us. They targeted me and came after me specifically and arrested me.
Alina Habba, who, just for people who may not be familiar, she's President Trump's former attorney. She is now the interim U.S. attorney in New Jersey, in your state. The way she puts what happened today is she is accusing you of ignoring multiple warnings from Homeland Security investigations to remove yourself, and says that you chose to, quote, disregard the law. Is that true? Had there been warnings? What had happened?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, we could. The reality is, Alina Habba wasn't there. The U.S. attorney wasn't there. She doesn't know what happened. Clearly, that is not the context of what happened. I was there for over an hour in that space, and nobody ever told me to move. I was in there for over an hour. Not a single person, not an officer from ICE, not any of the security guards. Nobody told me to leave that place. Somebody from Homeland Security came in the end and began to escalate the situation, and we wound up being where we are today. And that's, frankly, the extent of it. I didn't go there to break any laws. I didn't break any laws. I was there as the mayor of the city, exercising my right and duty as an elected official, supporting our Congress people, preparing for a press conference that was supposed to happen there. I did not enter that place unlawfully. I did not break any laws. And so all of that is incorrect. So she was not there. So she should get some better information.
How did it get so heated? I mean, you can watch this playing out, and we see you, and everyone starts shoving, people start yelling. What did the Homeland Security official that you said came up, and the first one who tried to arrest you?
Well, they tried to arrest me. As you can see, he tried to arrest me. As you can see, I'm calm. I'm not doing anything. I'm just walking. We got out of the gate. They, I guess, made a decision to come around the gate after we left to arrest me outside of the gate. So they did that. They arrested me outside of the gate. Obviously, protesters and the Congress people were upset. They tried to intervene. And so, I thought it would be better for us to just go ahead with these guys and so we not cause further kind of disruption there.
Were you trying to go into the gate?
No, I was already inside. I didn't have to try to go in.
Okay.
I was there for about over an hour.
I wonder what you've been in detention, so you've been being held, so obviously you haven't seen any of the coverage. The response from others, including some people inside the administration, is pointing to the fact that you're a Democrat and you're running for governor in your state and accusing you of basically conducting a publicity stunt. And I wonder what you would say to them tonight.
Well, I think the publicity stunt is this idea that we should violate the court orders, violate the Constitution of the United States, that we should run roughshod over state and local laws. The reality in America is that if we're having a dispute, then we settle it in the court. The city of Newark has a dispute with GEO about a certificate of occupancy, about them allowing our inspectors in the buildings, health inspectors and fire inspectors, who they've been rejecting every day. Every day we go there, we put the thing on the door and we leave. We're in court right now. They dispute that. They dispute that they should have an updated certificate of occupancy. They haven't had one in 20 years. We say that they need one because the local law demands that they have to get a change of use. They dispute that, and that's their right to dispute it. But the person that settles that is a judge in a court of law, not the President of the United States, not the U.S. Attorney, not ICE or Homeland Security. That is solved by a judge here in this state, and they even moved it to federal court, so the judge has to weigh in on this, and a magistrate. They can't just take matters into their own hands and do what they want. Extra legal action outside of the courts, and that's exactly what's going on here.
What's your understanding of what happens next here? Were there conditions to your release? What was discussed before you left today?
Well, I mean, I obviously was charged with federal trespassing and, which is a Class C misdemeanor. But, going through this is just really humiliating and painful. But the reality is this is what democracy is, right? And so, we are in dispute here, and we just living in a time period now where if you are opposed to the ideas of people, you could be threatened with arrest or intimidation, and that's exactly what's happening. And that's not the America that we want to be in. That's not the America that people chose to move thousands of miles from around the world to. This is not this place. And they're turning it into an authoritarianist government.
Do you have any regrets about how today happened?
No, I don't have any regrets at all. I went down there to support my Congress people, my Congresswoman from my district, Congresswoman Blondie Watson-Coleman as well, who is like a mother to us here, and Congressman Menendez, who's also from our district. I went down there to support them in a press conference, and I would do it again. I have a right to go to those facilities as the mayor of the city. A fire inspector has a right to be on those facilities, and it is not federal property. It's in fact private property. GEO is privately owned. It's a private prison that these people are getting $63 million to do this work, and they have to abide by local laws. That's just a fact. I don't care what our political differences is. They still have to abide by the law.
Mayor Ross Baraka, I know you've had quite an eventful few hours. Thank you for joining us so quickly after your release tonight.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Okay, there's been so many updates here on Truth Social. Of course, the president's social media. He had to start his own social media because, of course, he was kicked off Twitter and Facebook and X. All of them kicked him off. So they created a monster, and that's just the facts. They created a monster. I'm surprised this man ain't going all the way. Okay, I'm surprised because if I was tried like Trump was tried, yeah, there's no way. Everybody get in the booth. But with that being said, Trump just posted this. This was a couple of hours ago. He said, President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end of the bloodbath. Uh-oh. Here we go. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. The way Trump, he commands, he's just like, yo, you're going to have to agree with this because no more bloodbath. Keep going. Please, they will be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. And if it is not, European leaders and the U.S. will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly. I am starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have the meeting now. There goes the commander-in-chief fighting for so many factors here because oil price would definitely be affected once this war is settled between Russia and Ukraine because oil is a global trade. So definitely that is going to be even cheaper and much more affordable. Here we go. More Truth Social update from the OG right here. Here we go. You know how he goes. Back to back on Truth Social. All right, here we go. He says here, our country has been invaded by 21 million illegal aliens, many of whom are murderers and criminals of the highest order. And if we aren't allowed to move them if we're allowed to remove them because of a radicalized and incompetent court system, the U.S. will quickly and violently become a crime-ridden third world nation, never to see greatness again. OG. Here we go. Our lawyers should state this fact when going before the United States Supreme Court and all other courts. I was elected in a landslide, won all 7 swing states, 312 electoral college votes, won 2750 to 525 district, and easily won the popular vote. I must be allowed to do the job that I was elected to do. If not, we won't have a country anymore. Make America great again. All right. We got more Truth Social, ladies and gentlemen. We got more Truth Social posts here. I'm going to just go straight to this very important one right here. This one is very crucial. He posted this 2 hours ago. He said, let me get you that Truth Post. He said, here we go. Okay. Copy link and post it. All right. This is Truth Social post that I wanted you guys to see and read with me. It says, for many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher in prices than they were in other nations. Sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the exact same laboratory or plant by the same company. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or rightful answer. The pharmaceutical/drug companies would say for years that it was research, development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be for no reason whatsoever borne by the suckers of America. Uh-oh. Where we at? Okay. Borne by the suckers of America alone. Campaign contributions, where are we at? Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me and not with the Republican Party. Exactly. This is why I admire Trump. Campaign contributions, which is from pharmaceutical companies, y'all can support Trump. Y'all could have given Trump some millions of dollars to win the election, but it does not count with me. And not with the Republican Party. We're going to do the right thing, something that the Democrats have fought for many years. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that tomorrow morning in the White House at 9 a.m., I will be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. Prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced in caps almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equalize and, for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. I will be instituting a most favored nations policy, whereby the United States will pay the same price as other nations. Okay. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about this updates by the OG, by the 45th and the 47th on drug prices? During his first term, he brought down prescription drugs, especially when it comes to diabetes and stuff like that. He did it. Most people would say no, he did not, but he actually did. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the show. And what does Social Security has to say? Here we go.
I knew Frank Bisignano when he was in New York. He was known then, as he should be known now, as Mr. Slash and Burn.
Mr. Slash and Burn.
Can you imagine putting this man, who has no experience with Social Security, but who has experience in cutting the daylights of any organization that he becomes part of, being the commissioner?
Oh, my God. That is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer attacking newly confirmed Social Security Commissioner Frank Bisignano, who is tasked with avoiding the expected insolvency of Social Security after a long and distinguished career in the private sector at J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, First Data, and Fiserv. An Inspector General report last summer revealed that between fiscal years 2015 and 2022, Social Security made $72 billion in improper payments. Most were overpayments. Despite efforts to recover the taxpayer money, $23 billion remains outstanding. Social Security is projected to become insolvent within 10 years, at which time beneficiaries will receive only 83% of their scheduled benefits, according to last year's trustees report. Joining me now is the man himself, the new commissioner of the Social Security Administration, Frank Bisignano. Frank, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, and happy Mother's Day to all.
Happy Mother's Day to you
He
and to
sounds
your lovely
like
wife. And let me just say, I know Frank
RFK.
for a very long time, decades, and I could attest to his incredible work and his work ethic. Social Security pays out $1.5 trillion a year, Frank, does 74 million payments a month. You just left a company that does $2.5 trillion a day with 850 million transactions a day. What do you want to say to Chuck Schumer?
Well, first of all, he knew me when I was in New York, but I was down at 1 Broadway until I was confirmed. So I've been in New York, and I think we have a tremendous opportunity to improve here. Our ability to make payments accurately and have the data integrity. You know, people want to talk about, did 150-year-old people get paid? Well, that Social Security number is so important, the integrity of it, and the safety and security of it. So I think there's a lot of work to do here. I'm excited to lead the agency, and I'm excited to work with my colleagues. The team the president's put together is the best team that's ever been assembled, and I'm honored to be on it. Thank you.
So, you know, Elon Musk told us that there are people who are 150 years old on the Social Security rolls. We know that the oldest person in America, by the way, is 114. So I'm saying it jokingly. There's no 150-year-old out there. Did those people who claim that they're still getting, that they're still eligible, did they actually take the money, or are they just on the rolls and they're using their Social Security number for other bad reasons? Tell us the facts. What's going on?
Well, as you know, I've been in the job about 2 days, but the thing I'm very clear on is the integrity of the data is job one, whether it's a payment or whether it's how that number travels through a system. So I think it doesn't always have to be that fraud happened through the payment. Fraud and abuse can happen so many ways. So job one's going to be ensuring that Social Security numbers are only given out and maintained to people who should have them. And so I think we need to think broader about what Elon and Doge and the president were talking about. It's not as simple as did a 150-year-old get a payment. It can be as simple as did that number travel through the system and still be alive and used for many other things. Think of how many times as an American people have to put their Social Security number down. So I see that as an integral part of the job. You know, the Social Security Department, and I've heard the previous commissioner only say with Chuck Schumer, I don't know, we have a darn good record with a 1% error rate. I think a 1% error rate is not acceptable. It needs to be decimal points to the right. And that 1% error rate's on everything. If you think about your own financial transactions, if you had a 1% error rate on them, or your own data integrity, you had a 1% error rate on them, you would really, really feel like you were at risk. So we need to shut down all the avenues where these errors happen, and in that is fraud, waste, and abuse.
So we don't know if, in fact, those people have actually accepted checks from Social Security. They're on the rolls. We don't know if they've actually accepted money, but we know that they could be using their number in different ways. Like, for example, they could be using the number to get Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah, the number can, I think having the number assigned to a person who's eligible to have a number, and then when that person passes, they come off, and we can't put people on the rolls that shouldn't be on the rolls.
I know.
I don't think it was all about just the payments going out the door. It's about the total integrity of the data that eliminates fraud, waste, and abuse.
Frank, I know you wanted to serve your country. Your father and your grandfather both served in the Army, and this is very important to you. Do you believe you can stop Social Security from going bankrupt within 10 years, which is the Committee for a Responsible Budget is expecting?
Well, what I think is the team that oversees the Social Security Trust, which I'm one of, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Labor, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services. We as a team will get together later this year probably in the next couple months, go through the information that's produced. This is effort across the board that also will involve Senate and Congress. I think doing our job right sure is accretive to this economic challenge. It's been a 90-year-old institution, and as the president has said, we have no intent to touch Social Security. We have no intent to break a system that can be improved, right. But we have no intent to break it. And I do believe that that team that will get together along with Senate and Congress will ensure that this is here for the next 90 years at least.
Okay. Frank, it's great to have you this morning. We'll be watching.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. God bless you for tuning in. Happy Mother's Day to the beautiful, gorgeous, amazing, wonderful mothers around the world. Thank you so much for all that you do for the fathers as well as the kids. You are the real MVP. With that being said, instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. All right? Shout out to the military personnel. Shout out to the veterans. You guys protect our homeland. And we appreciate you guys. And also, don't forget, life is hard. Never ever give up, regardless of how many people are against you or regardless of how hard things can get. Just keep on keeping on and just keep going, man. Keep thugging it out. With that being said, God bless you guys. God is the greatest, and let love lead. Regardless if you're a Democrat or a Republican, it don't matter. What matters is unity, love, and togetherness, okay? And we are Americans. Support the homeland. Support America. America first. God bless you. God bless America. And see you soon. It is your boy, Genesis.